Hey guys, I'm Brandy McGee, and welcome to another episode of Witch History and Makeup, where we talk about witches and the history, and I do my makeup at the same time. And if that sounds like something awesome that you would like, you can hit that subscribe button. I do this at least once a week, and it's just history is a passion of mine. It always has been. I just love history. I've also been a witch for over 20 years, and so of course witchcraft is interesting. And on top of that, I'm a licensed hairstylist and makeup artist, so I also do that. I do many things. But anyway, let's go ahead and get right into the story of today. And today we are talking about the Woodplumpton Witch, or the dead witch, the zombie witch, the filed hag, the filed witch. She has so many nicknames. Her real name was Meg, okay? And that's who we're going to be talking about today. Her actual name was actually Marjorie, but she went by Meg. But she was actually one of the last of the Pendle witches from the Lancashire witch trials. She was one of the last ones. And so she was incredibly old. But before we get to her, let me give you guys a little bit of background on Lancashire and all that fun stuff. So let's talk about the Lancashire witch trials. Now, this certain area, we're in Britain, okay? We are in like the late 1700s, almost kind of like last week, almost around the same time frame, just in a different country. And this place was actually more like sacred land. It was more spiritual than anything. And so a lot of people went there. There was a lot of healers there, a lot of what you would say witches, but they also had the church there. But this place they weren't really governed by the church. And so it was made up. They weren't really governed by the church at all. They knew it was there, but they didn't really have that much respect for it. And so King James, this is during the time when he coins the term in the Bible from poisoner to witch. Okay. This is I actually meant to tell you guys that last week with the Kai Teller story, because when she did what she did to her husband, they turned that into a poisoner basically as a witch. They coined those two terms as the same thing and made it into a negative thing. Just to let you know, a little nice little fact right there. But anyway, so this place, Lancashire, they were wild, they were lawless. They had the church, but they were more Catholic than anything. They weren't really, they were Christian, but they were Catholics. And so Catholics, they party a little bit harder than, most other churches do, which is why I have a mega respect for the Catholic religion, because they do adopt a lot of the same practices that we use as witches by burning, incense and, all that fun stuff. Now, King James wanted a list of all the people in Lancashire that did not go to church, okay? He wanted a list, and now this list is going to be mighty long because, like I say, they were a lawless land. They didn't really go by the church, and the ones that did were Catholics, okay? And so he goes on to say, this is King James, he says, where the church was honored without much understanding of its doctrines by the common people. Yeah, that was a quote. And basically he called these people too uneducated to understand what the Bible was saying. That's how I'm reading it. And so basically that's, of course, when he takes it upon himself to tell everybody and explain it in his version of what the Bible is, which we all know. We all read it differently. We all read books differently. We see movies differently. We all see things differently, And so this is when he takes the opportunity to be like, okay, we've got to get rid of all the witches. And they do these whole witch trials. Now, these witch trials start because of this girl named Alison Device. Alison, she had issues Let's just say that she had issues. Poor Allison, she did. She was in the town. She was in the town. She went to this guy named John Law. I was like, "Hey, do you have some pens that I could?" I don't. It was not clear if she wanted to buy the pens or if she was wanting them for free. It's not clear. So, but anyway, he says no. Tells her no. Well, she gets really mad and she cursed him. Okay. Now, a few days later, this man drops dead from a stroke. Okay. Yeah, that's that. Mm-hmm. And so everybody's like, oh, I saw that Allison girl over there. She put a curse on him because he wouldn't sell her some pens. Now, y'all, I don't, these aren't writing pens, obviously. It's probably like a hat pen or something. I don't know what kind of pen, but it was some kind of pen. And he told her no. And she didn't like that. But she was a beggar. And so, anyway, she was like, she throws a curse at him, probably says, oh, you're such a horrible person. I hope you die. And so that's what happens. And then they start trying to pin past deaths on this Allison chick. All right. Now she's realized she's kind of messed up with her big mouth. And she has stuck her foot in it now. And so now she's going to start pointing fingers at other people. She decides to go for these two families that are they are rival families, okay? Now, one of these families they're actually healers. They have knowledge of herbs, they have knowledge of poisons, they help heal the sick, they help heal their community. And then you have this other family who were the fakers, the scammers, because of course there were witches back then that were taking advantage of people when they weren't witches. They had no knowledge of herbs and roots and flowers and all those kinds of things. They weren't able to heal anybody. They just kind of took their money. And so these two families were already kind of at each other because one was the real deal and the other one was not. Now, the head of these two homes, they were headed by these two old ladies, okay? And they were pretty freaking awesome, let me tell you. I mean, the head of your household back then is two ladies. That's yeah, I like it. So I have one family, that's the Demdike family, and they are actual healers, okay? And that one is headed by a lady named Elizabeth Southerns, and she was an actual healer who helped the community and cared a lot by using roots and herbs and things like that. And then we have the Chaddocks family, the scammers, the fakers, the people that are there just to say, hey, I'll heal you for this amount of money, and then they don't do anything. So these two families were at a feud. Allison says that these two families put her up to cursing this man, causing him to have a stroke and pass away, like a few days later. And then, of course, the families, they all start pointing fingers at each other like crazy. And then that's how the Lancashire witch trials started, basically. And the witch that we're talking about today is the last one of the Pendle witches from that trial. They talk about in Maine 12, but there was way more than 12 that were tried. There was. So we're talking about Meg Shelton, or AKA Marjorie Hilton. That's not what she's actually listed under when she was born, as Marjorie Hilton. We're going to call her Meg. And Meg was very, very old. Like I say, she was not from the place that she was living at either, so she was already kind of like a social pariah that way. This was during like the witch frenzy when everybody was scared of everybody. Everybody thought that everybody was a witch. And so, that's not really cool, but that's just how it was. So it's like if you didn't know your neighbor, if you didn't grow up with them, you didn't trust them type deal. And so you've got Meg, who is a loner. She's also a thief, okay? She likes to steal milk. She likes to steal food. But, you got to think, she was very, very old. She was very, very poor. She lived in a house, actually, called the Cuckoo Hall. And actually, it really wasn't a house. She kind of rented it. And so she kept to herself. she played jokes on people, and she had like this really bad limp. And so if you think about it, in the past videos I've done, we've talked about the witch traits or whatnot, you know, and she pretty much checks every single box. But nobody really talks to her. They don't mess with her or anything like that. They just ignore her because they don't know her, right? You know, she's done come from another place after the trials that she went through, I'm sure. And she's just trying to find a place to be happy. Now, these townspeople think that Meg is like 300 and some odd years old because she's so old, right? See, that's what makes me feel bad for her. But so anyway, she has this pronounced limp. So keep that in mind because that's going to come up in just a little bit. And so that was a birth defect. So that means that, you know, basically they were touched by the devil or whatnot. And what isn't, you know, that's not cool, but it is what it is. They said that she could transform herself into different animals, that she was a shapeshifter. Yeah. They said that she did that, but she did steal, and she did have a limp, and she was very mean and vulgar, and like I said, she played tricks on people all the time. And I think it was just an old lady like getting her kicks, but hey, you know, who am I to judge? So there are quite a few towny stories about Meg, okay, and they all are kind of magical, you know. So this one farmer goes out to his barn, and he notices that he has like extra bags of rice, like they're like piled so high that he can't see over them, okay. And so he gets his pitchfork and he starts poking each bag, right, you know, trying to figure out what's in these bags because he knows where his rice or whatever was in the bag was. And so then he pokes a bag and a scream comes out and out jumps Meg out of this bag and she takes off running, right? Like she had shape shifted into a bag of rice because she was there to steal. Excuse me. She was there to steal from the farmer, okay? I don't see that happening. They say that maybe she hid in the bag and was waiting for him to like go to sleep before she could steal. That I can see, but definitely not turning herself into a bag. You feel me? Like, yes, she may have hidden, but you know. And so we got another story now. This one's actually pretty funny. So a farmer says that he sees a woman and a goose kind of out there in his cow field. And he don't think nothing of it, you know. He's like, oh, this is cool, you know. They're just out there hanging out. He looks at the goose a little bit closer, and the goose has got white stuff coming from its bill. Yeah, it's got white stuff coming from its bill. And so the farmer runs over there and kicks this goose. The goose shatters into a million pieces, and milk goes everywhere. And Meg, who's the woman, she supposedly was the one that turned her goose into a jug she turned her jug supposedly into a goose, and she was stealing milk from the cows. Now, we all know, yeah, she probably was stealing milk, yes, because she was a certified thief, straight up. But I don't think she disguised her picture as a live goose. I don't see that happening either. But I love the stories. They're great. Now we kind of start getting into the sad part about this. I mean, the whole thing is really, really sad anyway, and I'll tell you why. So, her landlord of her house has accused her of bewitching one of his cows, and now that cow can't produce any milk. It's producing sour milk, and he thinks that it's Meg's fault. So he asked Meg to come over, and they held her hostage in their home until she unbewitched the cow. Make that make sense. And so then they released her after they had burned her and tortured her and basically kidnapped her. Okay? They released her after she unbewitched the cow. Okay? I mean, I can't make this up, y'all. I swear to God, I can't do it. There's no way I can make this up. So she goes back to her home, and at the same time, they're like, "You got to get out of your house. You got to go, Meg. Like, we can't have you in our home anymore or in our land." So she goes to a squire, and she makes a deal with this man. His name is William Haydock, and he's like a squire or all this other stuff. And so she tells him, "If my rabbit can outrun your dogs, then I can live on in one of your houses on your land." Because she knew she was going to get kicked out. She needed a place to go. She had nowhere to go. And so the squire's like, "Okay, that sounds awesome." So, but what he does before she releases her rabbit, he releases his dogs. And she had asked him to only use one dog because that would make it more fair. And so, but he released all of his dogs, and he did it early. So she releases the rabbit, and the rabbit is running through the woods. The dogs are right on the ass of this rabbit. They're about to get this rabbit, and it zooms straight into Meg's house. But right before it's in the door, one of the dogs clamps down on its leg. And they said that after that, Meg had a more pronounced limp even after she already had a limp, but it was more noticeable after that rabbit got bit. So, of course, that spread the rumors that she shapeshifted into this rabbit. And so she was trying to cheat her way into this home or whatnot. And so after she gets kicked out by her own landlord, she's sent back to her home, bruised, beaten, burned. And this is an old lady, y'all. And this is what they did to her. So Meg does as she's asked, and she returns to her home, and I imagine that she starts packing up, knowing that she's fixing to have to leave. And nobody hears or sees her for days and days and days. And so after a few days, the owners of, the place she was renting them from, they break the door down only to find Meg pinned between a barrel and the wall of her house. And she had passed away that way. They found her that way. And it was so strange to them for somebody to die that way back then that they said that that was the devil coming back to take their own. I'm not even lying when I say that. They said that the devil was coming back to get their own. This is how much they dislike this old lady. It makes me so sad. And so, of course, they also said that they thought it was a really weird way to die. So it had to have been something to do with the devil, because remember, witchcraft is everywhere now, The devil is everywhere and all this other stuff, according to these people. Because this is about the time when the Puritans jumped in and they added like torture and all that other stuff to it. So, you got to love that part of the story. So anyway, they find her passed away and they bury her. They don't now, and I got mixed reports about this. They don't bury her on church property, although her grave is now on church property, but she was not buried on church property. There's a church there called St. Anne's, which is where she was buried right outside of St. Anne's. And so when she was buried, it was out of the jurisdiction of the church consecrated grounds. So she wasn't breaking any rules. Nobody was like, because even though she wasn't a convicted witch, people in the community knew that, thought that she was a witch. Because like I said, she checked all the little marks, And so they treated her, they buried her and that was that, right? Well, no, not really. Because the next morning, when the preacher comes out to church and he's going to take his stroll or going to get his morning little loaf of bread or whatnot, her body is out of the ground and laying beside where she was buried. Almost like she had dug herself up out the grave and was just laying next to her grave. Okay, I mean, I'm sorry, but in all honesty, that would have scared the hell out of me. That would have scared me to death because, I mean, the first time you'd be like, oh my God, how did they do that? Like, why? Why are they doing this? You know? They got to be like, how did this even happen? Like, I'd be looking for a reason. Okay. So the pastor was like, maybe something weird happened. So we're just going to rebury her. Same spot, blah, blah, blah. Do the thing. And they bury her again for the second time into the ground. Night comes, and here comes the morning, and old pastor rolls out the church, old stretching. Oh, I'm going to go get my bread now and my tea. And he sees her body over there again, laying out the grave, out of the dirt, laying next to her grave. He's like, okay, I can't do this. I can't deal with this. I've got to do something about this. So he performs an exorcism on a dead body, guys. Yeah. Performed an exorcism on a dead body. And and it gets worse. After they did that, they buried her in the ground in this little narrow, like little hole thing, going straight down towards the center of the earth. So they bury her head first, face down, like parallel, only looking down, so that if she was to claw her way to the surface, she would only claw her way to hell, a space. That's what they said. Okay, that was what I read. She wouldn't be able to claw to the top. They positioned her in a very small thing, and they even put a granite boulder on top of her grave to make damn sure she was going to stay in the ground that time. I mean, I'm telling y'all. Needless to say, she did not come out of the ground again. Okay, she did not rise from the dead again. And she has stayed there. And now she is actually within the bounds of the church because the church has expanded. Because I saw a lot of people questioning, why was she buried on consecrated grounds if she was a witch? Well, when she was buried, it wasn't consecrated. And so that's why, but now it is consecrated because the church expanded their graveyard out. So she is a part of the church, but she's still there. There's a thing saying that you can stand on her grave and spin 3 times and she will grant you a wish. There has been people say that if you go to her grave and you deny that witchcraft even exists, then she will reach out and she will grab you or whatever. And it's also said that she haunts the woods right there next to the church as well, which, I mean, all in all, I probably would have done the same thing. Because, poor thing, she's not even really declared a witch until after she's passed away. She made it through that whole entire time, through all those witch trials and everything, and she moves on to a new place. She's not accepted, because she has like a limp and she has other things going on, and she's mean. She's old. Yeah, imagine she probably hurt a lot. She had to move around. She probably couldn't farm as well as some of the other people because of this limp that she had, and she was old. I mean, I can't even stress that enough. And so I think, in my personal opinion, that she went to her house and she was trying to move and do exactly what they told her to do. But the barrel evidently shifted. And especially if you've been burned and beaten and then you go home and you're elderly and your leg is messed up. I have a feeling that it probably was just a really terrible accident. And I kind of want to say maybe a little bit of karma from all this like stealing that she did, because she did steal from a lot of people. It's one thing to steal because you're hungry, but then if you're just stealing, like sometimes she would just steal just because, like she just thought it was funny, I guess. I don't know. But so technically, like I say, she was not buried on consecrated grounds, but she is now. And I actually feel incredibly bad for Meg, and I'll tell you why. Meg was the last Pendle witch. She, like I say, she made it through the witch trials, and she was incredibly old. And I think the fact that the locals didn't trust her because of what King King James was saying during this time was saying that all witches, he had made a doctrine, a witchcraft doctrine, and I can't remember the date. I want to say in 15 something, but I can't remember. But the day he banned witchcraft, said that it was punishable by death. King James did, and so whenever the witch trials happened, one passed in jail of the 12 that are mentioned. Meg, unfortunately, is not mentioned in the actual Pendle trials, even though she was the last of the Pendle witches. But she wasn't even from Lancashire. She was from Catskill, and so that's why nobody liked her. Which makes me kind of sad because growing up, we always learned like who our neighbors were. We knew even if they just moved, we still talked to them and said, "Hey." It wasn't like I don't know. Maybe it's a Southern thing. You know that we just don't like right jump off the bat just not like people. Just because of where they come from or who they are. I mean, of course, there are some people here that do that, but anyway, in my personal opinion, I think that she was bullied, and that makes me sad. And I think that she also um, probably yelled and screamed for help, or she could have gotten killed by the farmer who had like really really brutally hurt her. He's probably afraid. What if she goes and tells somebody? That doesn't look too good on me, beating up an old woman, for doing something that's not even true. She ain't bewitched nothing. She was just an old lady living her life. She was poor. She didn't have anything. And at the end, I guarantee you, she was there yelling and screaming, and nobody went to help her because they didn't like her. And that breaks my heart. It really and truly does. I'm sitting here looking for my blush brush, but I don't know where it is. But that's okay. So, but yeah, I feel like today's lesson in all this is to be kind to people. You don't know what people are going through. You don't know what people have been through in their life. So just be kind. You know, you never really know. Like, even with me, I didn't know if I was going to be able to get this video out this week because my daddy passed away Friday. And I thought about him and I was like, he would want me to do this. I get all this kind of stuff from him anyway. And so, anyways, that is the story of the Pendleton Witch. You can still go and visit her beautiful granite boulder that's sitting on her grave at St. Anne's Church in Britain. And yeah, now she's on consecrated grounds. But she was the last witch in Britain to be declared a witch, the last one that was supposedly put to death, even though I feel like either this was an accident or her landlord was coming to harm her because he was afraid that maybe she would say, "Hey, my landlord just did all these horrible things to me, like, help me out," and then everybody would kind of probably get on her side a little bit, knowing the guy. But I guess we'll never really know, unfortunately, and I hate that because, like I say, she was just a very old woman. And as we get old, we get more and more bitter, you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. But just taking into consideration with this story that Meg was, yes, she was old and cranky and she stole stuff. And yeah, those are horrible things. You should not steal. But the way she passed was so tragic. And the way I feel like Somebody knew. You can't tell me that that thing didn't squeeze her between the wall and the barrel and somebody didn't hear her yelling for help. Because she lived within a community. This Cuckoo Hall was a community of houses that people could rent out. So that's the story of the Woodplumpton Witch. And yeah, we've done 3 countries so far. If you want to know what I used on my face today, I'm going to list it down below. I also just got this mirror in from this company, Fancii, with 2 eyes. And let me tell you guys, this thing is absolutely amazing. It's got a 10 times, and then it's got a lighted, just regular side. And this has really helped me here, especially with doing these videos. But yeah, I wanted to kind of throw that out there too. And so, but you know, even I want to say, even if she did unbury herself too at the same time, let's think about this. If she really dug herself to the surface twice, why would she just hang out by her grave? Why wouldn't she get up and walk away? You know? So I think it was a very sick person, kind of like an Ed Gein situation, but only trying to be like, she was a jokester, so they're like playing the joke on her and her past life, or on, you know, her past life that just passed. And they just redug her up and put her outside her grave to scare everybody. All in all, I'll say that's what happened, because that's probably what happened. She definitely didn't scratch her way to the surface twice, because if she could do that, she could have got up and walked away, let me tell you. Okay. So I hate that they buried her like that. It's but you have to think this as well, and I have to think this too, just because of what's happened this week. The body is just a vessel. It's what's inside of you that counts. It's the spirit. It's what you exuberate to the outside world. Okay. So, anyways, that's our story for this week. I love you guys. Thank you for hanging out with me. If this was fun for you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I'm just getting started with these, and I'm having a lot of fun, and I hope you guys like them too. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I'll see you again.